Happy Easter, guys. It is Sunday and it is just after 6 p.m. Wanted to take a quick moment to talk about something that I'm pretty passionate about. I posted on a couple fishing forums on my Facebook and one or two other places just about a concept that I call sips versus gulps with respect to bass fishing. So, what exactly does that mean when I say sips versus gulps? By the way, this is one of my early fishing rods. I keep all my fishing rods of significance. Of course, I've had like 100, but I keep all the ones that were special to me. So, anyway, if you see this, that's why. But this sips versus gulps topic, basically what that means is that you have days that you'll go fishing and you may go hours and hours and get one or two small bites, but you never bring them in the boat. They're just kind of non-committal strikes. Sometimes the bass is just kind of slapping at it or pushing water at it, or um, could be a number of things. But anyway, they're not aggressive enough, and so you leave scratching your head and you're like, what happened? This is what I think really, really separates um, like an average person from like a really good fisherman. And so what it is like you may think if you're just starting out, or even if you're pretty experienced, you may think that just because you get a couple small bites, like, oh well, those aren't bass, or that must have not been a bass, or that was a, you know, they're not biting, or we need to move locations. And sometimes you can find fish that are more active in the lake. That's true. But a lot of times, for whatever reason, whether it's weather or the season, what season it is, like things slow down and they're not as aggressive, whatever. So um, I'll go around a lake and I'll think, okay, why did I just get these few bites all day? Couldn't convert any of them. What's going on? And you figure out you'll keep it. Like I figured this out over time, but I'll go a week, or I've gone in the past a week without catching anything of significance, but I get these few bites in some areas, and I'm like, what the hell? Are they bass? Are they not bass? And I figured out later in life, or later in my fishing career, that they are, but they're just not. They're wanting a different presentation, and so a lot of times bass get inactive, and I think everybody knows that. But really, you don't put two and two together firmly, and you may leave a place where you got a couple bites, but you realize over the period of a week that that's the only place where you're getting those bites. And so I've learned to stay there. Figure out what those few areas were where I was getting bit, even if they weren't aggressive. And I'll stay there and I'll change my techniques until I get them to commit. And that's like a really, really strong concept. So I'm basically just checking areas in practice and I'm going through seeing where I get bites. I don't have to bring them in the boat, but any place where there's action or I see wildlife or I'm getting like a little bit of some sort of clue by small bites, whatever, like that tells me a lot. And what I'm getting at is, yeah, I'll just sit there and figure out, okay, well, maybe they don't like the color, so I'll switch the color to try to match more the water clarity that I'm in. Okay, maybe they don't like the speed, so I'll change the speed. Okay, maybe they don't like the level that the lure is in, the level of the water that the lure is in. Because a lot of times when they get active, their strike window shrinks. And so I imagine it like a sphere, different radius spheres depending on how active they are. And if that strike window is really small, then obviously where the fish is at in the water column, like what height it's at, that's where you want your bait to spend the most time. So it's either speed, color, or level in the water column. Sometimes size, but not as much. I mean, size is more like weeding little fish out from big fish unless it's like really shut down. And then I'll scale down to try to just get some bites. Um, so I would say really, yeah, the speed, the color, and the height in the water column. But yeah, it's just it seems basic what I'm saying, but it's really not because you'll get in a situation where like I see a lot of pretty good fishermen even that just will keep moving, and they'll go all day, and it's like, well, we didn't do too well, and it's like, well, yeah, you didn't identify where the activity was and the life was, and then focus in and try to manipulate variables until you find what's the right thing to be doing. And so just I don't know, it's so dynamic. I think that's another important point is like how dynamic fishing is and how often they move throughout the day, depending on how much light there is or wind, or like just there's so many variables, and you can't get stuck into like a rut thinking, you know, that they just sit there and your favorite crankbait that you throw all the time that you're confident in is the one that's going to catch them, and you're going to catch them in the perfect setup that you've read online or saw in a YouTube video, and you're going to expect that they're going to be in that exact situation, and that's very often not the case. So you have to learn to adapt and be sure of yourself. That's another thing. That's what I'm getting at, I think, with regards to this whole sips versus gulps thing is like these little sips are just clues. And so this little bite here, little bite there, it's just kind of, it's like, okay, are you going to listen to those bites? Are you going to change it up? Also, if you do get one of those fish to bite, did they inhale the bait, or is it just kind of on the side of their mouth, or did they swat at it and it's on their tail or on their underside or their belly? You need to look at how the fish are getting the bait and how they're responding to your manipulating of variables, and figure out if that's what's going to work. Like that's so key. And if there's I'm just been thinking a lot lately about what are the few things that I can tell my viewers that are like the big keys. It's not just about oh, there's a new bait on Tackle Warehouse or at the bait Academy Sports. It's more like they're all tools and they all have a specific place that you use them, specific situation that's a compilation. Like there's always a specific set of circumstances that will make a bait do well, whether it's the amount of wind, sunlight, the activity. Like there's just a lot. So that's my takeaway. I want to keep it short and sweet, but just to summarize, yeah, just if you're getting a few bites, but none of them are committal, and you go around the entire lake and you're not catching them, go back to where you got those few little strikes and force yourself to figure out what it's going to take for them to bite, because they're there. Don't mistake yourself. They are there. It's just that they're very smart, and when they get inactive, and especially in clear water, when they get really selective and they're paying attention and they're not just voraciously feeding, it's going to take problem solving, which is why I love this sport so much. It's the hardest thing that I've ever done, and it forces you to be dynamic. So anyway, I hope that helps. I mean, really think about it. Like I said, it seems simple, but it's not. It all comes from confidence. So looking forward to sharing more of my what I feel are pretty valuable, uh, you know, pieces of information, and hope that it's helpful for you on your fishing trip. And stay tuned for more info in the future. Happy Easter.